Hello dear friends. I just feel today that I need a little bit of playtime. I have had a cold, which is not a big deal. Lots of people have been worse off than I have, but it's just made me feel a little bit sluggish and my brain's not been very creative. So I thought today I'll just play around and make some background colors. So I've got a little spritz bottle here with some water in. I've got some watercolor paints. I have some sketch pad paper, which is 150 GSM, and this does work quite nicely with watercolors, strangely enough, because often sketch pads don't. I have a little catering jam pack. I'm going to use the bottle and the lid, and then I have two cardboard tubes here. Doesn't matter that they're not perfect circles. I'm going to play around with those. So I'm just going to have a playtime creating backgrounds just so that I can actually just loosen up a little bit. So I'm going to spritz my watercolors, just using my little water bottle, and then I'm going to take my bigger of my two brushes that I've got out. Can you see that? No. There we go. I can't even focus. And I'm going to pick up some paint. So I thought with this one I'll just work with some earthy colors. I'm going to put some paint onto my cardboard tube. Initially the cardboard tube will just soak up quite a lot of the moisture, so I am expecting to have to maybe go over that again. So to begin with, my mixture is a little bit wetter than I would probably want it to be normally. And I'm just going to be working wet and wet, so I will, before I put this down, spray some water onto my paper. And I'm just going to let the paints do their own thing. So just using my little spritz bottle, making it fairly wet so that I can go wherever I want. Let's start over here, pressing down, just holding for a second or so, just so that the paint can connect. And then maybe going to do a couple more in this rusty tone. Just using Winsor & Newton watercolors. I have them on hand, but you could play with any watercolors that you might have, or anything that has colors. So you could even work with your tea and coffee dyes. You could do something like a berry tea, which has quite a nice sort of red tone. You can make colors with things like blueberries, dried blueberries, or black turtle beans also make nice colors. So I'm just simply going to add a little bit more paint as I feel it's necessary. And I'm not actually going to do any painting on the surface if I can help myself. I'm going to try and just let the paints do their own thing. I might not stick to my word in the end, but I'm going to try and just let them spread. You can, of course, go back in and play with your paintbrush if you wish, but let's just see what happens just with circles and paint and water. Where it's really wet, you'll see that the paints will have a tendency to spread, and where it's quite dry, the colors will stay fairly solid. Right, I'm going to switch over now and work with a little sienna color here on a smaller tube, and I haven't cleaned my brush in between, so we'll probably get a little bit of the same mixing of colors, but that's okay because they'll all be within this earthy color range. Right, loving that. You can see how the moisture is playing with the paint. It's very wet in that section, so I'm going to dive right in, and it's quite wet over here. And there's quite a nice lot of water this side. So even though I haven't applied more paint to my tube, there's still enough paint for it to be able to make quite nice marks. This corner is quite dry. My paint box was sliding all over the place earlier, so I had to just settle it down with my little pebble. Right, so let's just do a couple of these. Right, so it's drying up now, and I will need a bit of water on my paint just to get them juicy again. What's lovely about using cardboard tubes is that they all print slightly differently. This one is going quite soft quite quickly, which the other one wasn't, but in doing so it's actually giving a more squishy kind of texture, and I'm quite loving that. Right, so let's just play maybe just one or two more in this color. Where do I want one? One up here and possibly one over here. Right, let's activate some more of this color. You'll see the paper is starting to get really wet, and that allows all the colors just to bleed nicely. So I'm now going to go in with some yellow ochre, and because this is a lighter color, I'm going to just swap brushes. It does look, when you're putting the paint onto these metal surfaces, and when I used the glass bottle just now, that you're not actually getting any color on at all, but that's not the case. You'll see when you come to put it down, you will at least get the outline of your shape, and that prints far better than you thought it would, didn't it? So let's do a couple more with the yellow ochre. Quite a nice little sound that the little tub makes. Right, let's do one over here. When you see that the shape has not got much color left, you can just reapply some paints. And this is a lovely way of loosening up, a really lovely way of loosening up, because you actually don't worry about the end result. You know that you're going to cut this up to make a card. You might want to actually make something for a junk journal. You could just do an exercise and never do anything with it. That's also absolutely fine. I think quite often we get hooked up into the mindset that what we're producing or what we're doing needs to be something that's going to be of great significance and it's going to be perfect every time. But actually, when you think about it, it's the process that you're doing that actually allows you to be creative, and doesn't matter if it's not perfect as long as it's suiting the purpose. So for me today, my purpose is just to loosen up, and if I don't ever use this to make anything, that's absolutely fine. I'm loving what's happening with the colors here. They really are working nicely together, and you'll see I'm actually printing a little bit off the page as well, and that's deliberate to make it look as though it is part of a larger sheet of paper and not something that's just been contrived. So whoopsie, let's do a little bit over there. Didn't want to do that. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to use is this tiny little bottle cap. This is just the bottle cap from my spritz bottle, and I think I'm going to go with a darker brown, like an umber. Still have a bit of yellow on my brush, but that's okay. And you'll see with the darker color now, I've gone smaller. So that's because I wanted just to be a little bit more of an accent to what I'm working with here. Woohoo, that's nice. That's lovely. Right, let's do a couple of these as we get drier. Making quite nice little puddles. I don't know how your week's been. It's been pretty nippy here the last couple of weeks, really cold. I think we went down to -6 one day, but this last week hasn't been too bad, and I'm really fed up that I was sick, because I really would have liked to have been outside a bit more. I do enjoy being outside on these cold, wet days, because even though I'm in the UK and we tend to think, oh, nothing much happens on a cold grey day, often the weather is actually quite enjoyable. I know last week Friday, I was outside with some of my trainees. We were planting a whole raised bed of onion seeds, and it was just absolutely glorious. Wind wasn't blowing, so that was great, and we just managed to get a whole lot of stuff done. So we think that nothing's happening, but lurking below the surface of the soil, da-dum, 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 there's a whole lot of things growing. We did plant a lot of garlic and onion last year for our tea rooms. Hopefully we'll be able to supply them with lots of stuff for their soups and their sandwiches and stuff that they make. Tea rooms run by our trainees, which is absolutely fabulous. Right, I think I'm almost done. When do we stop playing? Hey, that's always the question. When do we stop playing? Right, now we must stop playing. Okay, so I'm going to leave this to dry, and when it's dry I'll come back and show you what has happened. It will always dry slightly lighter, so don't be surprised about that, and let's see what we can do with it. So this is my piece of card that's dried, and you'll see that it has dried lighter in color, and I love the way that some of the mixture in the colors have showed up slightly differently. There are definitely slightly reddy little bits, and you can see some that are definitely more yellow, but each part of this has just got its own special sort of qualities. I could imagine this perhaps being a belly band of some sort. This would be a nice background for cards. You could use this in junk journals, maybe as the beginning of a book cover. Quite nice for journal cards as a background. You could cut out small sections of this. So I think lots of opportunities, and then of course you could just tear it up for collage and use in your mixed media projects. So I hope that this has just inspired you to be able to loosen up and have some fun. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Please give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video, and consider subscribing to my channel. Bye for now.